like we are now recording. Thank you so much for that, Robin. The recording will be available after the meeting. Give us a couple weeks. We'll make sure it's posted online. The link that you see in your agenda is where we're posting these Conservation Advisory Group recordings, as well as the synopsis notes that Robin is kind enough to put together for us. So feel free to follow that link for the notes for our last meeting. In the meantime, I actually have them. Let's see here. That's not it. That's not it. Okay. I have them open as a Word document, surprisingly. All right, so please let me know if that's not legible. I think it's probably big enough. We did our introduction last time. We talked about the low-income weatherization program, where we were at. Talked about biennial plan, some of the goal setting that we were going to be doing as part of that plan, and we'll talk about that today as well when we get into our agenda items for today, but that was just kind of what we had addressed last time. Talked about the conservation potential assessment, where it was at. We've got a meeting coming up for that October 14th, I believe, Andrew. So that's kind of ongoing right now. And then we did our quarterly update, of course, for the commercial and the residential. Nothing huge there. I will actually draw your attention real quick. When you look at these synopsis notes, and Robin's been kind enough to put a timestamp in the notes, so if there's something specific that you're interested in about the previous meeting and you want to listen to that section, you can just go right to where the timestamp is and then the video and kind of fast forward to that subject. So really, really helpful, Robin. Thanks again for improving that process for us to make it easier. But if anyone has any questions as they go through these things, please feel free to let us know, or Robin, I'm sure she's happy to help out with it. We did a snapshot update of our point of sale for the residential program, annual report update, where we were at with it. Again, the BCP, we'll talk about that today in a lot more depth. I know I'm just scrolling through this. Mike had asked if there was any feedback for the decoupling report. We talked briefly about the Bellingham building audit. We'll do an update on that today as well. Yep, absolutely, Carrie. We're going over last meeting's notes, or notes, exactly. And then we talked about the quarterly meeting schedule. So that's the review from the last Q3 meeting. Any questions, comments, requests for update on the meeting notes? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we can go on to our agenda items for today. All right. So quarterly portfolio update. I think we're just going to jump straight into that. Sorry, too far. Brady, would you like to start out on our discussion topics for the commercial industrial program?
Sure, be happy to. So as was noted in the agenda, we didn't quite go through all the details of the final end of the month, what closed, what didn't close. So these are all approximations, but very, very close approximations to where we expect to finish quarter three on the commercial program. Year to date, we have achieved 197,819 therms, which is about 34% of the yearly therm goal. It tracks pretty consistently with where we finished where we were 2020 year to date, a little behind 2020, but tracking pretty similarly. One of the big projects that we expected on the commercial side to see close prior to Q3 has not closed yet or completed yet. But we do actually have dates for completion and dates for walkthroughs and those details. So we do expect, it's a very large therm project, a custom project, and we expect the close date to be, we expect the walkthrough date to be by the end of this month. So startup is occurring in the next week and a half, with a walkthrough and final review of the project expected by the end of the month. That project alone is 510,000 therms. So once that is achieved, the yearly goal will have been achieved. But of course, we have a lot of other projects still expected to close in the remainder of 2021. So while I'm not going to necessarily get into all the individual projects, as is noted in here, there's roughly 100,000 therms of projects that we have identified and do expect to close before the end of the calendar year, in addition to that large 510,000 therm project. One of the big takeaways from that project, it was a project that, as with so many things, was slowed down due to COVID, and then also hit some supply chain issues. A pretty similar note being played everywhere, I'm hearing. So we have seen that as well with some of the projects that we did expect to close a little bit earlier in the year, but have moved to Q4. And at this point, we're not certain of close dates on a lot of projects, but that 100,000 is it's a pretty solid number of projects that we do expect to see closed, even with supply chain shortages, delays due to staffing some of these projects and things like that. So as you might notice, I think the actual projection at this point is, as was noted, 578,483 therms. 578,483 therms is the goal for the year. The current forecast is projected to be around 731,000 therms. Again, that does include that 510,000 therm project. If you're kind of astute in noticing the numbers, they don't quite add up, in that we would actually expect to be significantly higher than the 731,000 therms if you add the 100 plus the 510 plus the 197 achieved year to date. That's because we base the projections for the forecast on roughly 75% of custom projects that we've identified closing, and then about a 10% growth in standard projects over previous year or a 3-year running average. Most of it's based on the 3-year running average, because 2020 was a little bit of an anomaly towards the end of the year, Q3 and Q4. So the 731 might be a little bit conservative, again, assuming that that there's no changes in some of the projects that we've identified and do expect to close in the remainder of 2021. Currently, we're tracking about even. We're down about 3% in standard projects in 2021 as compared to 2022. But that tracks well above 2019, where we've continued to see those standard projects grow. And that was really a focus of the program starting about 4 years ago, where we saw that if a large custom project were to come in, the program would achieve goal. If it didn't, there was not a very solid floor to achieving goal or to program growth. So what we've tried to see is consistent standard growth year over year, and we have seen that. I do expect that we will finish a little bit higher still in terms of standard growth for 2021, though that, like I said, is tracking a little bit down this year, about 3% down. So I think that is about it on the numbers and therm side. Any questions on that before I talk about some of the initiatives and specific campaigns that we've done, completed in 2021 and that are still ongoing?
This is Andrew. Thanks, Brady. I think I missed what you just said in terms of growth in standard projects. You said it was 3% down, but what is 3% down from what?
From 2020.
From 2020. Okay, but still higher than 2019.
Yes, 2020 was, despite the slowdown and the lower therm output in 2020, we still did see a slight growth in 2020 on standard projects.
Got it. Thanks.
Go ahead. Sorry. Good. Any other questions on therms, projects, numbers?
Brady, do you want me to show any of the graphs or tables?
Sure. I kind of spoke to the that one that's on there now, the prior comparison year over year, a little bit in terms of how we determine the pipeline or pre-pipeline in this case and the forecasted growth. But you'll see as well going down under that one with the therms achieved, just a graph showing where the expectation is that those projects will close in Q3 or Q4, and how that tracks towards goal, as well as how that tracks towards a comparison to 2020. And then, yeah, I guess everything else is kind of just a different way of viewing the same information. We did see, and we have continued to see, the therms achieved from boilers and insulation as the two most popular measure types. Boilers are even going to be significantly higher with some of the projects that we still have to close in 2021. So I would expect that to be closer to 80,000 by the end of the year, which is great. We've seen really significant uptake in both large and small applications for boilers. Schools have been, really diligent in installing high efficiency condensing boilers, but we've also seen a lot of smaller businesses install some of the smaller units with boilers, and it's continued to grow as definitely our number one measure, but also something that is super clean. And there's a natural evolution to boilers. There's about a 20-year life on a boiler, but a lot of the boilers that we're replacing are 40 and 50 years old. They're really old boilers that have just hung on, and they've been continuing maintenance. And through program staff outreach and connection with clients, we've been able to help influence going with the condensing boilers as opposed to, kind of a mid-efficiency boiler, which I'm sure we'll talk about later when it comes to the measures for 2022 and beyond. But just making sure that customers are informed on how efficient those condensing boilers are and how much sense they make. So I'm really proud of the team and the communication and outreach that we have done in obviously challenging times. And we are certainly out more than we have been in the past year and a half. But there's still a lot of hesitancy, and so we're trying to be smart about it for both our sake, but just as much for the customer's sake. Any questions on the numbers? Okay. One of the measures one of the initiatives that we've had for 2021 is the recovery message, which is an additional 10% savings on customers who invest in 3 or more measures. And these are specific to buildings under 50,000 square feet. It's been really successful.
Brady, I'm sorry,
yeah.
You said 10% savings. It's an additional 10% in incentive.
Thank you. Yep. Good catch. Sorry about that. So an additional 10% in incentives to customers where they install 3 or more measures. It's been a really good messaging piece for us in 2021, not just in terms of marketing and outreach, but in terms of a conversation starter. We have definitely influenced customers to look at more measures than maybe they were just initially looking at. The goal behind this, as you might remember, is that we saw significant many businesses either closing or temporarily closing, and the lack of investment. Obviously, at that point, with businesses changing hands and other people coming in and reinvesting, the idea was let's focus on getting them opportunities to, if they're going to invest and really play for the long term, not just the short term. And we have seen up to year to date, it's $5,977 in additional incentives. So you can extrapolate that out, that those projects alone with the measures were 59,000 plus. But we have several other projects that we do expect to close in the remainder of 2021. And I think we estimated that we'd be somewhere around $8,000 for these incentives when we went into this. And I think that's about where we're going to end up, maybe a little bit higher. So,
and just one point of clarification, it's not actually coming out of the incentive budget. It's coming out of my administrative cost budget. So it is a benefit to the customer directly. But because there are no additional savings associated with it, we're counting it as just an admin cost. And it really is, the cost is pretty small compared to the impact we're able to have through this bonus offer, essentially. Very similar to the bonus coupons that we do, mostly on the residential side. So.
Yeah, good point. Our Midstream program for tankless water heaters, we have a fourth distributor on board. Really, these four make up the bulk. There's one or two others that are pretty good market players that we'd like to get on board, but these four are the ones that have, without a doubt, the most contractors and trade allies that are a part of the program. So we do expect to see uptake on that for the remainder of 2021 and then moving into 2022. So I did see a question about Midstream. So Midstream is a distributor model program where we pay the incentive directly to the distributors, who then pass it down to the contractor, who then passes it down to the customer. So we have not had any projects come from this Midstream, and we just launched it last year. That has been disappointing, but we have definitely seen lower uptake just in general on Tankless, and we've seen that pretty regularly across the board with a lot of different, not just contractors, but the supply chain shutdown that kind of at first reared its head. We weren't maybe aware of it at the time, but talking to these distributors, March is when they kind of first started to see it. It really took hold in May, and it continues, as you know, or as you may know, to this day. So there's a lot of, there are several projects that we're pretty sure have been done, but as we've heard from our distributors, they're trying to get any product and anything they have out the door, and taking the time to do the paperwork prior to has taken a bit of a backseat to just trying to get the work done, because they are very busy, but also very shorthanded in terms of both staff and equipment. So I think we're going to see that there have been several projects and that we are going to incentivize them moving forward. But we will continue to work with those distributors to grow that program as we move through the remainder of 21 and then also into 2022. Any questions on that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking for a second. I'm interested in hearing, I think, a little bit more about the mechanics of how the program works. If I'm conceiving of what you just said correctly, Brady, this is basically it's similar to a mail-in incentive for a residential customer, where the midstream distributors sell the tankless water heater to the contractor, and then they turn in the paperwork for this. And it sounds like that's something that is not happening at this point. Am I correct about all of that?
You're correct. And what we've heard from the distributors is that in particular, the high efficiency tankless units have been in particularly short supply, and just tankless units in general. So for whatever reason, domestic hot water tanks. So a customer comes to a contractor and says, we need to replace our water heater. We're looking at going tankless. At that point, the contractor's saying, we don't have any tankless units. So we do have this domestic hot water unit. And this is the scenario that's been described to me by a couple of different distributors. So what's not happening, there are tankless units for sure going in that we just haven't seen the paperwork for yet. But there are a lot of scenarios where customers are desperate, both on the commercial and the residential side, but they're desperate for some kind of equipment to replace their unit that has just gone down. And so they're, at this point, just putting in anything they have. There is a strong desire, in talking to these distributors, there's a strong desire to go with energy efficient equipment, not just the baseline up to code equipment. but the actually getting the pieces and then getting the pieces to install, being able to install them, has been a particular challenge this year.
So the problem then does sound like it's kind of twofold. It's one, the lack of tankless hot water heaters in general, because we just can't get them. And two, it's distributors not putting in paperwork in order to get the incentive.
Correct. Yeah, and we've kind of redoubled our efforts on the latter point.
Sure.
And not just physically visiting, but actually, doing online trainings with the distributors. Of just, we tried to make this. I'm a big KISS person, keep it simple, stupid. So we've tried to make it as smooth as possible, and where we've been able to kind of adjust our program and submittal process to work to work best for the actual distributors. We have done that, and I think we'll see some dividends from that soon.
Yeah, I guess that's what. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Andrew. I was just going to say we asked Brady to analyze from our standard program. We still offer these tankless water heaters to the commercial industrial customers directly as well. We have some safeguards, let's say, on the back end to keep from being able to, or to keep from like double incenting the same piece of equipment. But we asked Brady to analyze what the uptake was on the tankless water heaters as a whole throughout all of our programs in the last couple of years. Cross-reference, are we actually seeing just a decrease this year? Did we see a decrease in 2020 because of COVID? Is it just the midstream where we're not seeing uptake on these tankless water heaters? Really trying to dig into the lack of participation from the midstream program. And Brady, please correct me if I'm wrong, but what we were seeing was a decline overall in the program participation for this tankless water heater rebate. So it's not just the midstream, but it's overall. And then also the midstream, we're seeing a gap, as Brady had mentioned.
And we did identify a particular sector that has been traditionally where in the past there have been very large projects, very large tankless units going in at hotels. And it's not just hotels, but your standard, I think just in terms of the numbers, we are seeing a slight decline in small tankless units. The 199 kBTU, I don't want to name a brand, but those types of units that are kind of our standard, where you'll see a small restaurant, something like that. That's still slightly down, but where we've seen the big drop off is those larger projects, which does kind of track with the industries that were most deeply impacted by COVID. So where, your hotels may have invested in very large tankless units to replace several domestic hot water units. They're not making those investments right now, and we haven't had a large tank. We will have one large tankless unit before the end of the year that is directly through the customer, and that's at a school district that a project that we expect to close probably in November. But we have not had any large tankless units go in, which is not. It kind of tracks with what I see through the marketplace, which is that the hospitality industry in general is not making as much of an investment as they have in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess I was just going to, I think you kind of addressed this, but I was just going to ask if there were delivery mechanism tweaks that could help with the issue of the distributors not putting in paperwork or anything, but it sounds like you're at least exploring options there. So, okay.
Yeah, we've definitely addressed it. I have a pretty good relationship with the distributors, and we really, we have definitely bent over backwards to make this work for the distributors, but we constantly need to tweak, and I am not only open to, but desirous of having those continued conversations, and we will. I've started participating in some of their team meetings, things like that, where I'm calling in or attending their team meetings to be able to present any updates on the program and how it's streamlined from an operations perspective in order to achieve their needs. So it's been, again, we went into this, TRC as a whole has a lot of midstream experience, but our program has not done a midstream program before. But it's somewhat common around here to have a midstream program, and with it being so specific to commercial and tankless and not all of HVAC or something like that, and being gas, it's a little bit of a niche in that way, and so we're open to and continuing to adjust accordingly.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. And then two other kind of outreach pieces that we have done. We started a slightly different approach with our Google Adwords campaign in August. There have been increases in visits to the website, but we're expecting more. So some of it's just an investment that we've made in terms of the keywords that are being searched for and where we could get more results. So I think, being that this was a little bit soon for us, in terms of, I don't know that we necessarily have all the September number. Well, I know we didn't have all the September numbers when we provided this information, but I think there has been a slight increase in September, not as much as maybe we anticipated. So again, kind of reevaluating exactly how we're doing that and what we're focusing on. But our Google AdWords campaign in the past has produced significantly increased results. And so we've adjusted a couple of things, and we're going to continue to adjust in that in order to see website visits increase in the coming months. And the last piece is we've started a lot of Spanish-speaking advertising. We've done a radio campaign kind of in the Tri-Cities area, and then targeted a newspaper in the Yakima area. This is really a trial in that while we do have the application and the incentives and everything in Spanish and bilingual, we have not done a targeted campaign to those groups. So we did start that.
Specifically on the commercial industrial side.
Thank you. Yep. Good clarification. And we have done that. We started those in July, I guess towards the end of July. So August and September have been kind of full bore on that. And it's really a test to see, do we think we're getting more results from the radio campaign or the newspaper campaign, or is it about the same? And how do we move forward? Because we want to do a little bit more robust advertising in that market. So it's been good. We're going to continue to do that and continue to evolve those outreach tactics to address a marketplace that we believe has definitely been underserved. So,
and Brady, I would add it's an interesting line to walk because we know that demographic relies heavily on relationships and peer activity to adopt maybe energy efficiency, any programs. It's very relational. On the other hand, some of these commercial business owners are very reluctant to be identified as, strictly a Hispanic, Latinx provider, and so we're trying to understand how to influence and communicate effectively with that group. So it's a cycle of learning right now, I think.
Definitely. We've had a lot of we see a lot. It's, as Carrie said, it's a little bit touchy because we don't want to narrowly cast someone or anything like that as focused on a certain population in terms of who they service. But we know that people get their information from a variety of sources, and so finding that Spanish-speaking radio station group that has multiple channels that we can, and literally channels, but also radio station channels, multiple channels that they can reach out to customers, and then as well the newspaper side. It's going to be something that we're gonna hit on some things, we're gonna miss on some things, but we're gonna take as much learning as we can from it, and how we're even going to determine that. We're still having those meetings. So if anybody has thoughts, anybody has ideas on how to not only measure, but any outreach ideas or opportunities, we'd be happy to explore those. We are going to get more involved in 2022 with chambers of commerce, and just sharing information through the chamber, but getting more involved in the Hispanic chambers as well. So, because there's a good group out there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that outreach to Hispanic chambers of commerce sounds like one good avenue to try and approach. I don't know that I have anything specific to add to that in terms of other potential avenues, but yeah, that one sounds like a good one. I don't know, it'd be awesome if anybody else has any experience in this area that might be able to offer some advice.
I would say Cascade has tried through our baseball game messaging in the Yakima area. We've done some targeted Spanish language messaging through that. And I know Cascade as a whole does some bill assist messaging in Spanish, specifically on the east side of the mountain. So as Brady's mentioning, the Yakima area, but also the Tri-Cities area. So lots more opportunities for serving that territory, and we have certainly spoken with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in the past, but it's been a couple of years. On the residential front, we actually went and presented in person. I think there's a lot more we can do in the new year.
Great. Any other questions for the commercial program? All right. Thank you all for your time, and feel free. I'll obviously be here the rest of the meeting. So if anything pops up or any other questions come up, please don't hesitate.
And this is Corey. I just have another thought to put in terms of outreach to Spanish-speaking populations. I don't know if there's an equivalent in Cascade service territory, but a large community service organization that serves the Seattle area is El Centro de la Raza. I actually don't know if they serve outside of the Seattle area, but they may have partner organizations or know other organizations throughout Cascade service territory that might be connected to the Latinx business community as well.
Thank you. I will research that.
All right. Thank you very much, Brady. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next topic we have here. We'll be talking about the Biennial Conservation Plan, so I'm sure that we'll be directing a couple questions your way shortly. Thanks, Brady.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to move on to the residential front. We have, I actually want to recognize Jocelyn has been helping me pull together the residential, specifically the residential program accomplishments year to date. She's kind of taken over that task for Cascade in tracking and developing our infographics relating to the efforts. So thank you so much, Jocelyn. I might turn to you for some questions as I go through this. And she's also working with Brady to standardize it like in the new year. So we have a really good quarterly update for the CAG on program accomplishments. But if you have specific requests or recommendations on what you want to see from our quarter, year-to-date accomplishments, please let me know, and we can follow up with Jocelyn and see, how this report can kind of morph in the new year. So doing a great job. I really appreciate it. So we have accomplished 320,000 therms this year for the residential program as of August. Again, this meeting was about a week earlier than we would typically do, so we didn't have a chance to get all of our September numbers in, but pretty good numbers. 68% of our goal. We had about another 7% in the queue. So at that point, we pretty much met, or actually since then, we have essentially met our 2020 goal. Please keep in mind our 2021 goal was 40% higher than 2020. So we are on track to hitting 100% of our goal for the residential for this year. But we've already pretty much met and exceeded the goal from last year. Let's see, we did have a slightly slower processing this quarter than previous quarters, which is not atypical. We have the cyclical flow. We kind of go a little bit lower in the summertime, and then it starts to pick back up late October, November, leading into that heating season. So, and then we also had a lot of requirements as far as the conservation plan and conservation potential assessment, just a lot of other things going on in August. So we didn't process as many as we have in the previous months. Still, like I said, on target to meet our goal for the year. I won't go through each of these individual bullet points because I'm sure that you probably read them already. I will say, let's see. So any questions specifically about the numbers of where we're at? I can scroll down. I can scroll down to the actual therm accomplishments, but we can kind of come back to these other bullet points on residential program status as we go through. How about any questions, comments, clarifications you'd like on our standing for the residential program before I move on to the other items?
I'm kind of reading through the agenda. The agenda here. So Q3, you typically see a slowdown in processing. And that, again, that's kind of sounds like it's normal. Is that due to normally kind of like diverting resources over to doing the planning processes and everything, or is there something else involved?
It's twofold. So lower submissions from customers, for one thing. The queue, actually, the number of actual rebates in the processing queue goes down in the summertime because we kind of catch up, and then we're just not seeing as many submissions. So we're seeing that on the back end, and then yes, we actually do need to prioritize. We're still paying customers, we're still getting rebates, but we actually need to prioritize the reporting requirements or planning processes. This year it was a little more intense than other years because we moved it up a month from what we would normally be doing. Our annual conservation plan wasn't typically due to the Conservation Advisory Group until November 1st, and then submitted with the commission by December 1st. So we had to, move that up a month. We also are shorthanded by a staff member, so we were compensating for that as well in August, end of July through August and into September. And you also have COVID, which a lot of people didn't take time off. So for almost a year and a half, so when we come back to the summertime, we certainly have a backlog of people needing to get some personal time. So that's kind of what you're seeing there, Andrew. I'm sorry, was that my audio or?
That I think is your audio. It kind of sounded like it got worse right there. Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say anecdotally, it does feel like people are really catching up on vacations this year. So sure.
Monica, this is Taylor. I also wanted to add that we about doubled our outreach as well with magazines and inserts and whatnot. So it's been busy in the outreach world as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Taylor. We are doing a lot more of that public outreach via collateral, let's say, advertisement placement this year than we have in past years, especially this summer.
Monica, this is Heather. I have been reading through the BCP, and there's a bullet point here corresponding to one of the paragraphs that I didn't really understand what's going on in the BCP, and it's about this software and public user experience and improved trade ally. So the sentence from the BCP that I'm going to read, and I'm just hoping you can explain what this means, because a lot of these terms are new to me. The company will implement the new public user experience in 2022 to enhance the online application process. I understand what an online application process is. To coincide with the transition to a new trade ally software platform through Nexent in 2021. And then the evaluation, measurement, and verification program within iEnergy is available for the company's use, which enables Cascade to perform more internal EM and V. Okay, I'm wondering if you could just walk through that with me.
Break down what we're saying. Okay, so iEnergy is the platform that we use through Nexent is the company that hosts it. So it's a software platform for us to process our residential rebates. Within that same platform, we have a trade ally platform. So our contractors are able to use that platform will be able to use it a little more. They haven't done it too much to actually update their trade ally listing that we have, the directory listing. We manage their license and registration information on there. I think, correct me if I'm not wrong, Sheila and Carrie, please, but I think that the trade ally is actually able to help the customer apply for their rebate through there, or will. I could be a little off on that. I'm not involved with that part of it as much. But that's the way that the trade allies are able to go into our program and interact with our program. Of course, they can always call us too if they want to do that. So that's sort of in place already. The PUX, which is the public user experience, is a new online application tool. We have a public user interface through Nexent, again, same company, that's used right now for customers to go in and apply online. The new version, a newer version of it is available, or going to be available by the end of this year, with an improved process for the customers. It's supposed to be more streamlined, a little easier. So we're hoping to get more of those applications through the online experience. Cascade's territory is fairly rural, and we still get a lot of just mailed-in applications. So it's a way of trying to improve that technology on the back end for the customers, so that it's less of a barrier. You know, we're always looking to remove these barriers. So I think it's a combination of things that we're looking at. Did I answer the questions? I'm trying to remember if there's another element of that. Oh, the EM and V. So the evaluation, measurement, and verification is also available through that platform. We worked really hard with Nexent for the last couple of years to make sure that there was a way for us to do some internal evaluation, measurement, and verification. We do realize that that's not the same level that you would see from a third party, obviously, but it gives us some insights, and then it allows us to work from that with third parties in the future for a externally implemented EM and D process. So that's kind of what you're seeing there within that very dense bullet point, Heather.
That made a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking. Andrew, any other questions about that part specifically?
Not right now, I don't think.
Okay. So maybe I'll just scroll down here real quick. Any questions on any of the tables relating to the accomplishments year to date? I mean, you can see what we're forecasting for therm achievements for December, November, October. You can see it compared to that 3-year average, which is how we started looking at our forecasting. I think it was about the beginning of this year we started looking at the 3-year average instead of just the previous year. With 2020 being such an anomaly, we didn't want to just compare program, success and or forecasting based on the anomalous year. So we're really looking at that 3-year average now on the residential front. You can see the processing, our trend, again, the 3-year average versus 2021 for monthly application intake, and then the forecast of what we think we're going to get for the rest of the year. you see it ebbs and flows, but we definitely get the uptick in October, November, December. That's that cycle that I was talking about in the heating season when we start to see more applications. I don't know this year, and Brady kind of talked about this, if the shortages or supply issues are going to have an effect on the residential front as well as the commercial. Anecdotally, we're hearing there's some of that. As far as it playing out, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see what that'll look like as we progress more into the heating season, and where we would typically see more demand, or at least more submissions of applications. We'll probably hear more from our trade allies as well. Again, goal accomplishments, we're right on track. We're doing well. Takes a lot of time to get there, a lot of processing time for us to do that, but I think we're doing well. Okay, any questions on the residential numbers? I'd like to kind of address these little bullet points, and then we can jump into the low income and then start talking about the BCP. Okay, I don't think I'm hearing anything. So just as a note, we are doing a Veterans Day bonus, similar to our bonus coupons offered through the TA network. In this case, it's directly linked to eligible rebate, offering veterans an extra bonus if they let us know that they're a veteran and they qualify for a eligible rebate. So we'll be sending that out in November. It's going out in our messaging through EVM. What does that stand for again, Taylor, Chris?
Best version media.
Best version media. Okay, so a targeted magazine, let's say, that we're sending out in certain areas of our territory is going to let customers know about this option. And I think it's going to go in the bill insert as well, Taylor. Is that right?
Not on the bill insert because it's going to be commercial, but we're thinking in the Mount Baker Theater ad that's coming.
Right. And I think online we're going to have it on our website, right?
Yeah. Yep, have it online on the main landing page.
And it'll, as far as budgeting for it, it'll come out of the same budget that I used for the bonus coupons for the trade allies. So we're hoping to increase uptake on the program, of course, just more messaging opportunity, and of course recognize the veterans as we can. Okay, the next bullet point here is just to Heather's point earlier about the public user experience portal and the improved trade ally platform. So I think we addressed that. If anyone has questions, please let me know. I'm happy to go in depth on that a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second and then reshare because I want to show you an ad that we recently placed on streaming media, which is to the next point here. So bear with me a second. All right. Can someone let me know if you're seeing the puppy?
Yep, we can see it.
Yes.
All right. Hopefully there's sound. So I'm going to play this here for you.
Hey, human.
What?
There's some things going on here that need your help. Oh, this is money and energy leaving our house and your wallet. But with rebates from Cascade Natural Gas, you can earn more green when you choose energy efficiency. There's rebates on water heaters, furnaces, windows, insulation, and so much more. Just get a few quotes, contract your work, and get your rebate. Spend less money on energy and more money on treats for me. Act now at CNGC.com.
Were you able to hear it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. I never know if these things are working right. So big kudos to Chris. She really helped work with on the back end with the vendor to help us create the commercial. It's a different, like I said, foray for Cascade. It's the first time we've done an animated version similar to that. First time we've actually done streaming media, which allows us to reach out, not just in a targeted territory, like one area, but one of the things that we struggle with is being able to reach all of our customers within Washington State in the eligible rate codes. That's always been a struggle for us to be able to stretch our advertising dollars enough to be able to meet them all. Granted, this is one avenue. It's streaming, but it was throughout our territory, and we were able to target certain demographics to be able to have this ad played. So it was a lot of fun to create, for one thing. Really we really had to think internally about what our message was, how did we want it viewed by the customers, what measures were going to be long-standing, where would we have the most impact for that. There's a lot going on when we think about this type of messaging. And then that streaming platform where we actually played it. So you can see some of the, actually, let me share this other screen agenda again. So you can see, we ran it August 15th through September 15th. We had 424,000 impressions. That's the number of times the ad was served or exposed to our target audience. It was on connected TV with a completion rate of 98.4%. That's pretty good, in my understanding. I won't go through all of these, but the pre-roll was actually like a 15-second shorter version of the ad, essentially. So we had 571 people actually click on it to look at our web page and follow up on the offerings that we have. So it was a strong ad campaign, and it's something that we're looking at replicating next year and adding the commercial program into it as well. That was, targeted towards the residential. We showed a residential house and everything, but it kind of opens the door to us being able to advertise more along this route. We've done the radio campaigns, as Brady mentioned. We've done that for the residential as well. This is, as I said, our first foray, at least from the EE side, into the advertising of this nature. We've also done some commercials during venues, avenues, like I don't know what to say avenues, but venues like the baseball campaign, where there's a game playing and it plays up on the big screen. So we've done commercials for that in the past. But anyway, this is something fun. Any questions about our streaming?
Yeah, I might have missed this, but what is connected TV and what is the completion rate?
Okay, so connected TV is like Roku TV or anything along those platforms. We worked through Univox Media, and they actually purchased the time for us. And we don't know ahead of time if it's going to be like which platform specifically it'll be on. It's based on what's available within that price structure. But we have a whole listing, and we'll include it in our annual report when we talk about the program media uptake and impact. But it was, it was shown on like, I think History Channel was one of them. Like I said, Roku was one of them. What is, Carrie, if you can help me out here. I'm trying to remember what some of the other ones that were listed out there.
Pluto TV was one.
A little louder, Taylor, I'm sorry.
Pluto TV.
Pluto TV, yes, that was another one.
Free streaming services.
Okay.
It's I think the full list is Sling TV, Direct TV Now, Pluto, Newsy, Tubi.
And so the ad then plays like before your TV show or whatever it is comes on, I guess. Gotcha.
Yeah. Similar to like, I don't know if you're on Facebook and you watch an ad. We didn't do social media specifically, but it's similar to that. Is an ad pops up in the middle of whatever else you're watching, and it's based on specific demographics that we put in play. So.
Okay, I think I get it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be exploring it more, like I said, in the new year, more opportunities, and that particular advertisement that we created has kind of a long shelf life, so we'll be able to reuse it as well for the investment. And I think you had one other question. Was that the video completion rate, or what was the other question that you had there, Andrew?
Yeah, I think I was curious what that completion rate actually signifies. Does it mean that like people that's the number of people who let the video play till the end or something?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's kind of fun to talk about anyway. All right, so I'm going to move on to our low-income program update. There's two things here that we want to talk about, and then we'll just maybe take a quick break, and then we'll go into the Biennial Conservation Plan. Alan, I'll ask you to go ahead and speak to the low-income program, and then keep in mind some of the items that we were going to talk about are BCP specific, so maybe we can punt that part after our break the goal setting is, for example, for the low-income program.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. And I believe Sheila's on the call as well, so we can both talk a little bit. But I'll be pretty quick. For Q3, we've had 29 homes served year to date, 126 installed measures. Things seem to be moving along fairly well, and we're comfortable with the trajectory of the program. We'll be reaching out to our agencies fairly soon to get our annual meeting on the calendar, either at the end of the year or the beginning of next. We usually have one right around that December, January timeframe, so we'll be coordinating and reaching out soon for that virtual discussion. And did anyone have any questions about our Q3 achievements? All right. Well, then I'll talk quickly with Sheila's help a bit on the asbestos mitigation project. I think many of you have been in the loop on that. Since the time that we've been able to incentivize for 100% of the total installed cost of a project, it's been excellent to being able to reach homes that weren't necessarily the low-hanging fruit. But there's certainly an energy savings potential, there's a demand, and there's a need for that customer for their home to receive weatherization services. And so homes that maybe because of cost previously would have been more difficult to reach are now accessible because of the flexibility of the program and the ability to cover that total installed cost. But still, when we do see projects that extend cost-wise beyond the average cost that we've paid to date for individual projects, we just feel more comfortable reaching out to our advisory group to make sure that we're all seeing things the same way and that those measures or that cost is eligible to be covered under the program. And just to make sure that you remain in the loop as needs and costs continue to evolve for our weatherization program. So the total cost, we had a project come in, and the total projected cost for the mitigation of asbestos in that home, plus the weatherization, we're looking in a range of just under $40,000 to potentially maybe just under $60,000. So we did circulate that out to the advisory group to get feedback on that. Last I saw in the email thread, it sounded like folks were fairly comfortable with us proceeding, but we just wanted to confirm, and I'll let Sheila speak to any additional details.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this specific project. It's a home that was built in '53, and there's asbestos in the heating ducts, and they used vermiculite in the attic. So that asbestos is a naturally occurring component of vermiculite. So they're going to have to remove all that. And we're looking for guidance on whether to proceed and mitigate the asbestos presence enough so that the weatherization can take place. So it isn't actually a complete abatement. It's mitigation to make it possible to do the weatherization. Any questions?
Yeah, Sheila, Al, this is Sean, Energy Project. Just want to provide some additional context here. So I reached out to program manager, talk a little bit more about this project, and the scope of work as well as options available. So yeah, there's an elderly gentleman in this older home, and as you mentioned, there's asbestos concerns within the attic and ductwork that represent significant portion of the cost of the project in addition to the energy efficiency work. I've requested that the agency seek additional bids for the remediation work. Those were not able to be produced today in time for the meeting. That we're expecting those next week. Additionally, we followed up with the city of Bellingham. They have access to repair funds that house has actually already received for some other repairs, with the purpose of trying to keep this low-income elderly gentleman in his house, if at all possible. He's currently heating with the parlor stove for the entire house, and so certainly inadequate heating system and very energy inefficient house. This caught my attention when the notification went out to advisory committee as well as additional members of the group. The concern that I have here is twofold. One is, the process for which projects are vetted, the number of people we're asking for input to make a decision, as well as obviously, looking at the BCP, average costs are increasing. That is the result of numerous factors. But in this case in particular, this would likely be one of the highest priced or highest costing projects that we have seen to date, with the repair work or mitigation work likely potentially exceeding the energy efficiency work. And so I think that is probably a good threshold for the potential to, generally what we would say would be that this project is deferred due to costs, is generally how these are handled. So my thought here would be if repair and or mitigation costs exceed the energy efficiency expenses, that would be a threshold for some cost controls here. I hate to be the low-income advocate and then also be representing a position that would potentially disallow this project moving forward. But I do think we do need some guidance for agencies here, so that way we have some ability to have a methodology for determining reasonableness and also a reasonable process for asking for input for sort of case by case projects here.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Sean. The reason why we circulated that out to the CAG is because we felt that that's exactly the kind of guidance that we're looking for. Is there some threshold? Is there some limit? We certainly wanted to be able to help this customer if we can. We understand that it's a difficult situation, and there's always that risk of a walk away if costs are too high. And so, from our perspective, we were supportive of being able to provide the funds to facilitate the work that needed to be done. But because it was on that higher end, because there's no clearly defined parameter around that right now, other than total installed cost of measure, we just wanted to make sure that there was an understanding from our regulatory body and from our advisory group of what we were looking at, so nobody was surprised, and just in case there was any alternative opinion on whether we should proceed. And so we felt that was probably the appropriate group to bring it to, so that there was a better understanding of what we were approaching. But in future, I would agree that if we have some parameters around it, that we understand that if X it takes place, then yes, we can approve this project. I think that's helpful, and if there's anything that's maybe more on the fence, we could certainly take that to you, Sean. We could take it to staff and discuss it further. But yeah,
I think the definition of incidental is probably the most operative factor here, and it's just looking at the textbook definition here, the dictionary definition. Something that's likely to happen as a consequence of an activity, but it's also something accompanying but not a major part of something. So, I think that's just in terms of moving forward. If we have potential for repair costs exceeding energy efficiency expenses, that would be case for additional follow-up. And, in particular, in this instance, and I don't want to take up too much time here with the group, but the treatment of the vermiculite in the attic is of specific interest in terms of the approach to that. Because vermiculite does, as Sheila mentioned, does contain naturally occurring asbestos, it's not necessarily uniformly distributed throughout the attic. It depends really on which where the vermiculite came from, honestly. And so you can test an attic and find some in one section, but not another. So we're looking at further analysis and mitigation strategies for that attic to attempt to find different approaches that may in fact reduce the overall expense with that abatement. So we'll have more to follow on this. Like I said, I've been working with Kyle and the project manager on this just to get some additional information and options, because I most definitely want to see this work as a project. I think it's a good candidate. However, certainly being sensitive to cost controls here, want to take a reasonable approach.
Can I just, this is Gil Peach, can I just jump in here and say that this is a problem that I've found in Washington State in doing evaluation of low income for Pacific Power, is that there's just a ton of walkaways in Washington State, more so than I've experienced in other states or provinces. And I think it's got to do with when housing was built and of certain areas of the state having been high economically at one time and then gotten lower at other times. And we always have this problem. I mean, you just get sick going in and talking to people about their conditions, and and you find they're eating the dog food because that's what they can afford, or they're taking the special at the local high-priced little mini mart rather than anything else, because they can only walk so far and that's what they can get. And it's just something that happens to people at a certain time of life, and who are living in certain houses, which might have been really nice houses at one time. They might have actually been high end or high or middle class when they were built, but they just happened to be built with materials, and that was the way it was done at that time, and now you're stuck with it. So I'm not sure anymore about this. Clearly the company has to have a rule that's approved or that's accepted by the state and by the advocates. You can't just spend all the money there is on one house. On the other hand, if people are actually experiencing these conditions, they do have to be addressed by somebody. And then at the same time, it would be good to know, we're talking about one house here, and I think it's really excellent to have an example like this, but I'd also like to know, are there other people in the community that also have those houses? I mean, and my experience is that it's just a function of what were the building standards at a particular time, how were things built, and then what was the economic history of a community? And are some parts of the community just down now that used to be high in income? I'm thinking here of the introduction of Social Security during the Depression. One day there wasn't any. Then the next day it finally came into force, and little old ladies all over the country were receiving Social Security checks. And if you think about that, so it's pretty miraculous. So I'm thinking that it is possible to deal with these problems, but it does require money, and it does require a change in perspective. It doesn't help a lot, but I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gil. And to your point or question of, are there other houses like that in Cascade's service territory? Most definitely. And this is something that 3 or 4 years ago we would have hit the $10,000 limit. It would have been a walk away, no questions asked. Here, we've got the flexibility, and we want to maintain that flexibility, but we want to use it responsibly. And I'm certainly cognizant of the cost of the program and how to manage that. in a manner that we can both, meet the needs of these houses that do have significant costs in order to get the efficiency work done. I mean, the reality here is if we completed this project, we have effectively a house that will be good to go for, that the way houses were built in the 50s, that's likely going to outlive us all, and getting that house more energy efficient is going to be beneficial for the life of that house with the measures. However, we do have, sort of a reasonableness factor here in terms of how much is too much to spend on one house using the utilities funds. And my goal here is to see if we can get alternative approaches that achieve the outcome we want, and two, to see if we can leverage additional funds for this particular house, so that way we're not solely asking, Cascade for this. And so I'll be able to report back on that once we have additional bids. We have new contracts coming out from LIHEAP and some federal sources, so that is a possibility. So I'll keep the company updated on this, and certainly the CAG as we get some more information to make some decisions here.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate that, Sean, and I think from a personal perspective, I think all of us want to be able to help the customer if we can. So it's not a matter of wanting to walk away or to provide less funds. It's just wanting to understand within the regulatory parameters that we operate that if there are any limits around the costs, and like you said, with the definition of incidental cost, just making sure that we're being good fiduciary stewards of ratepayer funds, and that we can distribute weatherization dollars across as many homes as possible. But when you do have one-off situations like this, you want to help if you can. I mean, absolutely. And so I think before it's a walk-away situation, we'd want to continue to talk about it. But of course, if we continue to see a volume of homes that are at this level and the prices continue to increase, we just want to have a conversation to understand, we don't want upward boundaries on it, but just to understand what is considered mutually by our advisory group and our regulators to be an appropriate range of cost, and what those parameters are, and the definition of incidental, and how we treat each home so that we're consistent in our approach. But other than that, of course, if we can get this home weatherized, I think that would be fantastic. And just understanding moving forward what those parameters should be, and I say that loosely, we don't want to prevent homes from being served that ought to be served, but rather just to make sure that we're playing the role that's appropriate for us to play, that if there's opportunities to leverage additional funds, that those are being leveraged, and that we're able to be as effective in our role as we can be.
So Robin, I think I heard a to-do there, a follow-up from Sean on the process that we're at with this particular project. And then we need to clarify from the CAG's perspective what the parameters are that Alan mentioned, if that is that definition of incidental that Sean mentioned, or what criteria we have to work within in the future for us to, when to reach out, as Alan said as well, to the CAG for clarification.
And if certain things should be going to the advisory group, or if they just go to staff and maybe energy project, and it's discussed there, or if the full advisory group is the most appropriate platform for that discussion. Because I think we were taking it to the CAG as a whole because we wanted to understand, get some of that guidance around it. But once we have that guidance, we'll want to understand, do each of these incidental one-offs go to the CAG, or does that go to a smaller group to resolve it?
So I have two action items. Correct?
Yeah, one for Sean to follow up on this specific project, and then the second is for us to clarify when to go to the CAG directly, and if there's going to be a subgroup for one-off questions. and then there's also that question of what is the definition of incidental.
So this is Andrew, and I guess I kind of wanted to weigh in on a number of these things, and probably ask a couple of more questions. Let me think where to start here. So it's a lot has been brought up here. I think procedurally, it does sound like a good idea to, as I think has now been mentioned, like figure out some sort of a threshold or something above which a project like this could be brought either to the whole CAG or to a smaller group of it. My knee-jerk reaction might be to say, for starters, I'm not sure exactly where that threshold is, but my, again, knee-jerk reaction kind of feels like the one that I think Sean threw out about how about when the mitigation cost exceeds the actual cost to do the energy efficiency upgrades. Sort of sounds reasonable right now, but I'm kind of curious. Maybe nobody knows about this, but is there a threshold that any of the other utilities in the state use for when they, when they go ahead and do the repairs, or what a walk away point is? That might be kind of a reference point for us as part of this discussion.
Sure. Yeah, Andrew, I can answer that if you're ready for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, recognizing that you have a number of issues you want to talk about. So the couple factors here, looking at other utility programs and service territories, I think, as was mentioned, and some of them in the BCP, the incidence of low income and low to moderate income for Cascade is, I would say, significant. More than half of their customers would qualify as either of those categories. I think upwards of 60%. So we are dealing with housing stock and areas that are economically depressed and with older houses to a certain extent. I know the study didn't necessarily see a correlation there between income and age of housing, which I was a little surprised about. But to the point, within PSE's weatherization program, health and safety and repair costs do not exceed 30% of the overall project cost. That is the standard used for that program. Recognizing again that their service territory is a little different from Cascades, and so being able to have some flexibility here with projects has been extremely helpful for getting projects done. But again, talking about cost controls, I think looking at the operational definition of incidental would be a good place to start here. And then if we need to make further adjustments on that based on performance of the program, that would be my recommendation.
Sean, did you say for PSE the health and safety and repair costs can't exceed 30% of, did you say total project cost?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
That is okay. That is my. It's been a minute since I've sat down with the fine print, but that is my recollection. And then Vista, I do not have that number offhand. If there is, I don't know if there is a limit on health and safety and repair expenses, and with Pacific Core and Northwest Natural, I'd have to dig in. PSC is the one that stands out to me because I think we've most recently made adjustments there.
Okay, that's helpful to know. So I guess my second, I think my second procedural thing I was going to say about this would be, I probably, again, this is a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction and kind of open to further thought. I would probably lean towards saying let's try and keep the discussion on projects like this to a smaller group of people. I'm not sure that the entire CAG needs to weigh in on this, but again, I'm open to other suggestions on that. My other question was around the definition of incidental, and as Sean kind of just said, it's been a minute since I've really looked at either the low income tariff or the weatherization manual, but I'm curious, can someone just remind me where the term incidental actually shows up? And yeah, is that in the tariff, or is it in the manual, or is it somewhere else?
This is Sheila. The agencies follow the Washington State Department of Commerce weatherization specifications, and that is where the incidental incidents takes place. You can find it in the manual. I'd be happy to send it to you where it's located, if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Not the manual itself. I just, yeah, if you can point me to where exactly, because it's like 200 pages long. So
Yes.
It's like 500 pages these days, I think.
It's really big. Yes, I will.
Yeah.
I'll grab the section that contains that direction and send it to you.
Great. Last thing I was going to say, Sean, you have hinted at trying to see if there are other streams of funding that might be accessed here. I think I heard you say that the city of Bellingham has already been trying to keep this fella in his home. And you may have said that they've already given him some money to try and do that, but I may have missed the details on that.
Yeah, I think there was a significant roof repair that occurred through a program they have to keep particularly seniors kind of aging in place. So that's my understanding. I don't have the details directly in front of me, but that he has been a recipient of those dollars for his roof. So the other potential funding sources would be, now that we're in a new federal fiscal year, kind of depending on what's happening. I know LIHEAP contracts are being issued. That's where the majority of weatherization funding is coming from. The capital budget approval for the biennium was the lowest it's been in over a decade for weatherization. So we'll be using quite a bit of federal LIHEAP funding moving forward. And so those contracts are being issued now. It may be that we could utilize some of those dollars for efficiency measures and limited repairs. So that's another question I'm following up with project coordinator here.
Okay. All right. I think that's the last of my questions. I see Corey's got his hand up.
Yeah, just one quick time check. I absolutely want to address Corey's question, and then we probably will have to either punt this to another discussion or maybe a subgroup of the CAG, and we can continue this discussion about this particular type of situation, just because we have to get into the BCP, and I think it's going to be a pretty robust conversation there. So please, Corey.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. I mean, maybe this question's too obvious, but Commerce has to have some guidance around encountering asbestos, right? If they don't, they should, because it seems like it's not an uncommon problem.
Yeah, it's a deal breaker for a lot of projects. Asbestos, in particular, vermiculite, has been a walk-away subject matter for years now. So they do most certainly have terms and definitions and procedures in the manual for dealing with this, and that is part of it's just expensive is the case, is what the challenge is.
Yeah, so this is Sheila. Corey, there's an entire section, policy 9.9, in the manual regarding asbestos, and let's see, it's only about 3 pages, but there's strong guidance about how to do it, and the complete removal of asbestos is prohibited. So limited asbestos removal or remediation is allowed. So yeah, they're well aware of it, and like Sean said, the vermiculite, and I don't know, when I was doing weatherization, there was siding that had asbestos in it, and we did a lot of walkaways on that, but it's I really appreciate the discussion, and I will Corey, do you want me to send you this policy from Commerce regarding asbestos? Want to take a look at that?
Sorry, my computer was stalling and I was not able to unmute there. Yeah, if you want to send that over, that would that'd be some good context.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll do that.
And I found our tariff language as well, so I just pasted it in the comments, but we do make reference to incidental repair work necessary. But provided advance review and approval is provided to the company prior to payment. But we do have the incidental repair reference within our tariff as well.
Okay, so Alan, do you want to follow up with perhaps Sean and Andrew and Heather on the process for maybe approvals on these one-offs or who we include in those discussions moving forward, and then we can circle back with the CAG as Sean will circle back on this particular project?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you everybody for the robust conversation. I think this is really important, and I really appreciate the interest in it and trying to serve our, the customer base as well as we possibly can. I'm gonna have us take a quick break here for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll start on the BCP. There's more on the low-income program as far as the BCP is concerned, where we talk about the goal setting. So we definitely will talk about that further, but I do want us to jump into the BCP. So I see it's 10:37 on my clock here, so we'll give us about, I guess 10:38. So let's come back at around 10:43 if we can. I'd like to give us 5 minutes and try to get in there. If that doesn't work, then maybe 10:45 is probably more practical. So at least by 10:45, that'll give us about 8 minutes. All right, thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Monica.
Okay. It is 10:45. I apologize, and I'm going to give you guys a little more time. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to touch base on the different elements of the Biennial Conservation Plan, so you have a chance to give us some feedback, recommendations. I do need to fess up to having an error in my timeline here on the BCP reminders. It says October 1st. That is inaccurate. We're filing with the WUTC by November 1st, so apologies. Didn't see this until actually I'd sent it out to you, but this is actually 11/1. So actually, let me do a quick base touch. Carrie, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I appreciate that. So as y'all know, we downloaded the plan on last Wednesday via BizCom. If you are having any issues with that, please do let us know. I'm happy to resend it and invite for you to download it again. We've decided to use that platform because it makes it a lot easier for you to access it directly versus trying to send 3 or 4 separate emails with a different attachment for each one, running into whether they're too large or all that on the back end. So just it's a nice single package. But if you're having issues, please let us know. I'm happy to make sure to get it to you. Amy did ask for the Word document of the plan, so I will take that as my to-do following this meeting and send out a copy of the Word document. If anybody else needs a copy of the Word document for the main part of the plan, please let me know. I'm happy to send you a copy of that as well. Thank you, Andrew, for that. As far as the timeline, obviously go ahead, Andrew.
Actually, so as far as the Word document goes, just a quick question for you, Monica. How would do you have like any kind of a preferred way to get feedback? So like I could give you an example, like Heather and I could read through the document and maybe send you, if we had a Word version, we can send you like a highlight and with a comment in the margin that has our question or our comment or something like that. If that would be a preferred way to receive feedback, then maybe a Word version would be helpful.
I get it 3 different ways typically. Some folks prefer just to do comments on the PDF. Some, as you mentioned, Andrew, prefer to redline and make either edits or comments to the right, in that Word doc. And then some people will send a separate document where they just list out the items, page 2, could you please add this, that kind of thing. So I'm open to whichever works best for each CAG member. My preference when I actually do the final edits is to obviously submit the final plan, and then to the CAG directly I'll send a listing of the items that we addressed. Of course, if it's just a misspelling or something like that, I won't list that out directly. But if it's a specific question that required an edit or a comment or an adjustment, then I'll make a note as to, this was the question and this is how we addressed it. Here's the issue, here's how we addressed it. And so I'll send a separate Word document to that extent, or to that point. So I'm happy to address it whichever works best for our CAG members.
Okay.
So I'll just so you have it, I'll send you and Heather a copy of the Word document as well, Andrew.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Okay, great. I've got that on my to-do list. All right. So to timelines, we are asking for revisions, edits, recommendations, to Andrew's point, by the 15th. So I think that is next Friday. So by close of business next Friday. That will give us time to accommodate those recommended changes. If there's edits to infographics or significant additional research or something that we need to do, that gives us time to actually accommodate it for the end of this month to get it filed when we need to. So please let me know if that's a concern for anybody. We can talk about it on the back end, but just so you know, that's the date we're looking for that feedback. And then, as I said, this is incorrect. It is we're filing it by the 11/1/21. And then, Andrew, I think you said in another conversation with me that the commission is going to try to look at all of the utility BCPs around the same time. And was that in December?
So typically our practice, or the commission's practice, is to have all of the conservation plans on the same open meeting agenda. With a BCP year, with this being a BCP year, maybe not typically, but in the past we have ended up having that being a a recessed open meeting rather than just at a normal at a normal meeting. We haven't had deep discussions on exactly how we're going to time this out yet. I would tend to guess this might end up being a recessed open meeting, but again, not sure about that. And as far as timing goes, we'll shoot for December. I don't know that we get there.
Okay, that's fair. we can follow up with the CAG on time.
Yeah.
We have a more firm idea of the latter half of the process.
Yeah, it's still pretty TBD. So. Okay.
Well, what we know is the timeline that we have control over, so we will make sure that we meet it, our requirements. So by November 1st, we'll have the BCP filed with the commission. And then we'll go from there. Okay. Any questions on timeline other than that? Okay, I'm going to move on to the Exhibit 1. So, Andrew, this is where we're looking for feedback from you and Heather. One of the requests that we had gotten, or that we interpreted, was that our biennial conservation plan be similar in format to PSEs, where the actual rebate offerings program specific data that's changed, which would normally occur for Cascade and our tariff, be incorporated within the biennial conservation plan. So we took out the elements that can be updated on a program or on an annual basis for like a tariff filing, and put it into what we're calling Exhibit 1. I think that PSC has theirs as Exhibit 3, I think. So this is where we're looking for feedback. If that process is what we were hoping to replicate, if the format that Cascade has done is similar to that, what type of updates do we need to make to that to make it correlate with what you had in mind, with what the commission had in mind, as far as switching from the updating process and the tariff specifically to via the BCP. So that was the impetus behind this pretty significant shift in the way that we did our annual conservation plan. You have a copy of the Exhibit 1. I actually have a copy here I can pull up and we can look at it briefly if we want to as we're talking about it. Specifically, we removed the items from the main body to correlate with the process that the electric utility, excuse me, used for their program offering updates. And we're just looking for what is this along the lines of what you had in mind, or is there something completely different that we needed to consider as we're looking at the organization and making sure that these are readily available and the versioning and all that.
Okay, sure. I have made a note of this, and I'm sure Heather will be popping back on momentarily. She just had a presentation that she had to do, unfortunately. So I will say a couple of things. First of all, I just got back from vacation yesterday. I haven't even looked at it yet. So I have some catch up to do. And then second of all, yeah, I guess to step back for everybody's kind of edification, the recommendation that I had made to Cascade as Cascade started putting together its BCP was to kind of, to the extent possible, mirror a little bit what the electric companies were have done with their BCPs in terms of format and everything. Seemed like it would be useful in terms of just kind of clarity of all programs and everything. Knowing this BCP would probably have to be, in terms of detail and length and everything, probably end up being a little bit bigger than what Cascade has done in the past. And I use PSE as an example, honestly, because they're the ones that I'm most familiar with. And they do seem like they have a pretty good format in place and everything, or at least it works for me, and I haven't heard any significant concerns from anybody else. So that's a little bit of background, I guess, in terms of what perhaps led Cascade to do what they did with the exhibit and everything. But yeah, I will take that point back that Exhibit 1 is one place that Cascade is really looking for feedback on. So we will pay some attention to that.
Okay, great. Maybe I could just walk through the table of contents on Exhibit 1 real quick so you can see what we did move into it, and keep that in mind as you provide us feedback. So we have a versioning. Obviously, if there's going to be any sort of edits, we would need to be able to keep track of them fairly quickly, readily. We know that there's the red line process that we've done for our tariffs in the past. I'm not sure what the BCP process had looked like for PSC, but we did notice that there was versioning specifically on their Exhibit 3, so that's what we're trying to replicate here. Just make it really clear, what are we updating, what would be updated, when, what's the reason, etc. So this is a versioning control, change management control tracking. And then outside of that, we did just general discussion about adaptive management, our residential program, Schedule 300, what the current offerings were, what we're looking at updating as part of those offerings. Same thing with the commercial industrial, what's the current offering, what are we going to look to update in the biennium. And then we included our terms and conditions and for both the residential and the commercial program. So we didn't want to make it too busy. There's some things that still need to be as part of the actual main conservation plan. Energy efficiency plan. So those are still in the main body, but this is specifically what we pulled out and what we thought might change in the year, throughout the year. So you can, as you go through it, you'd speak to it in the narrative form. What are we looking at? How are we adaptively managing? What are some things that we think are going to occur? And then we actually did have the current offerings in here as well. Residential program, what are we looking to update? Here's narrative around those different areas, different measures that we're talking about updating. Those are all available in here. Here's our listing, UCT, TRC, based on what the recommended updates are. Same thing, existing commercial program offerings. Narrative-wise, within consultation with TRC and our CPA vendor, Applied Energy Group, what are we looking at updating? The reason that we're looking at updating each of these different measures for the biennium, and then again, the UCT, TRC, and the portfolio level UCT, TRC based off of the new recommended updates. And then we also moved the low income current program offerings in here as well, to align with what we're seeing on the commercial, industrial, and residential side. So it's all in one document, and then we have our terms and conditions as well for the residential and the commercial program. So that's what the exhibit is right now. If the CAG could, as you're able, provide some feedback and let us know if there's something else that you think specifically should be in the exhibit, or if there's a different format that you think that it needs to take, please do let us know. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. It's very manageable. Let us know if it works for you as well. So that's what we're looking at for Exhibit 1. Any questions before I move on to the target setting? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to target setting. So we do have the targets in the conservation potential assessment. I can click on those in a second here. I'll show you. We've also got the budget, so maybe that might be part of the same conversation. The two different tables in there show the targets. I will say, Cascade performed our measure review with Applied Energy Group to compare our measure lives, therm savings, incremental costs. We did a really, really thorough review, measure by measure, with Applied Energy Group. This is after the conservation potential assessment's done. We now look at our program specifically and say, okay, this is what the CPA said. What are we actually offering right now? Measure by measure, measure life by everything. We cross-referenced everything against the annual report spreadsheet that we use at the end of the year to report our savings, what we actually achieved for the year. It was a really good exercise. It was very involved. We were looking at each of these measures. Where can we increase our rebates from that portfolio level? What do we have? What do we have available to work with to remain within that cost benefit threshold that we're looking for? As far as the target setting, we took it directly from the CPA. So what does the CPA say is available for the residential program, commercial program, and then within the residential, because, and this was to Sean's point, we did break out our residential potential by income, sector. And then we set the targets based on not just what the CPA was setting from the low income sector potential side, but what the agencies were saying they could, that they could achieve or serve within that subset of the residential program. So that's what you're seeing within the CPA. I'm happy to click on the link that we have for how we set those low income goals. I'd like to kind of ask, I don't know who from the CAG has actually had a chance to look at what those goals are. I'm happy to just kind of scroll to them on the actual BCP so you can see what the goals are right now. Target setting goals, I'm kind of using them as the same sort of process, same word essentially. But what questions do you have before I just start kind of digging in? I don't want to just talk to myself, so I want to speak to what questions you have or what clarifications you'd like to see.
So this is Andrew. One thing I'm noting is I'm trying to, in the PDF of the meeting agenda, I'm trying to click on the low income potential calculator and it's not working.
No, it doesn't. I couldn't get it to work, but the Word document actually does. That's why I sent you the Word as well, because that link is available.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
My apologies. I kept trying and it just would not work.
I'll look at the Word version then. Yeah, I don't know that I have. I think it would be useful just to take a look at what the targets are that you're setting in the BCP, and maybe just glance at this low income potential calculator here. I don't know that I have specific questions on it yet, because again, like I said, I haven't had time to spend any time with it yet. But I think Heather is back on now, so it's possible she has I don't know, something to say, or it's possible she doesn't.
I'll say that I do think a quick review. I don't have any specific questions, Monica, but quickly taking a look would be great.
Okay. Let me click on that link. I had it open. I'm sorry, I've closed it since then, so I just want to make sure that I can get the low income one open so you can look at that. Bear with me here a sec. I end up having like 10 different files open when I do these meetings, and yeah. One open. Right. So for the low income program, Alan, do you want to walk through this part, or would you like me to walk through it?
I can certainly provide additional context and thoughts as you start to walk through, and then I'll be glad to jump in.
Okay. So when we look at the conservation potential assessment from AEG, as I mentioned, they took the residential, actually, I'll come back to this one. I'm going to actually just show you the BCP section where we're talking about it, because then it helps. Bear with me here, I'm sorry. Where am I at? Okay. So we're going to go to the, where did I put it? Alan, help me out. Where's my low income? Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. All right. So when we talk about the actual savings potential for the low income program, I did put, I guess I didn't put in this part of it. Okay. Sorry. Okay, this is the one I was looking for. If you look at the table 12 down here, the CPA designated the residential potential assessment, and they broke it out by low income, moderate income, and regular income. The low income for 2022 is estimated at 23,000 and change therms. If you look at it for 2023, it goes up to 28,000. So Cascade took that information, and then Alan and Sheila reached out to the agencies through the MOU process, the Memorandum of Understanding process that we have. And this was per discussion with Sean as well, saying, you know, are we underrepresenting what we think the actual target should be? Sean, please forgive me if I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, is there opportunity for a better understanding of what that potential is, working with the agencies, showing the agencies our conservation potential assessment, and letting them weigh in on what they think that they can serve in the next 2 years in the biennium.
Right.
So,
Just to, sorry, I'll just briefly make a statement here. So, yeah, the conversation that we had was, because this is the first time the company's looking at a biennial plan, and what agencies have identified as their goals, you know, I think it was 2019 where we had, you know, we were getting close to 70 completed projects. And then, you know, obviously 2020, we had the whole COVID impact. So my conversation was that I think having the agencies understand that the what their stated goals are for the year, and then how that interacts with the BCP is there's a different sort of interaction there now. So having a more informed conversation about the expectations for the company with the BCP and then how the agency's goals play into that. And so is providing some more context for staff so that way, because I think, you know, the reality is I think agencies are conservatively reporting or stating that their goals are, with the understanding that, well, they can complete more work, but that doesn't necessarily help the company in identifying their BCP goals. So that's the long and short of it.
thank you, Sean. So we did go back to the agencies. Sheila, you know, reached out to them, and then in some cases, I think she actually called to clarify, you know, what do you see, you know, just coming back, here's what the third party assessment that we got says, you know, what do you think that you can or will be able to serve in the next 2 years? And so with that feedback, we took, you look at the CPA and what it's saying that the low income potential is, say, 23,000 for 2022, and then the 28,000 for 2023. So we took those numbers and then looked at what the agencies were saying that they thought they could serve. So Alan, I think in 2022 they were saying they thought they could serve 89 homes, and then in 2023 they were saying 98 homes. We took the average savings per home, the most recent average savings per home, I think, or was it the 3-year average? I can't remember, Alan.
I think we ended up with the most recent.
Yeah, it was about 200 therms per home.
Yeah.
is what the estimate is. So we took that and multiplied it by what the agency said they were going to be able to serve, approximately. So that's where we came to what we deemed the our savings potentials were for each of the years. So instead of the 23,000 that the CPA said, agencies were thinking they could serve about 17.9 for the first year, and then just shy of 20,000 for the second year. These therm savings are pretty high compared to what we've achieved in the last 2 years. So these estimates are higher than we would have from recent historic achievements set our goals at. And I mean, we set the goals at, I want to say 11,000, 13,000 for the last couple of years. So this is a significant increase over what we have set them at. As you said, Sean, the agencies need to be able to serve these homes or feel that they can adequately serve these homes. So I'm not sure if this, I think this is aggressive, even with setting. It is lower than what the actual CPA is saying the potential is. It is still aggressive for what Cascade has been able to achieve for actual savings for this sector of the homes. That's not saying there's not a lot of opportunity, and we will all absolutely, do everything we can to support the agencies. But that's not so short definition explanation of how we set the low income portion of the goals for the CPA.
That's right. We want to pursue every opportunity we can to serve more low income households. And so I think maybe some of the variance between the CPA and what we're seeing here is in how therms are or how the agencies might anticipate. There's a little bit of variance between how therm savings are calculated through the agency with their treat reporting or the priority list, and then the deemed therm savings that we use to calculate. Our numbers are all based on the averages. So based on engineering best practices, the deemed savings associated with those measures, I think that we're going to be looking to make some updates to what those deemed savings are based on the AEG analysis. And so we can shore that up based on their most recent understanding of baselines to make sure that we're looking at the savings in the appropriate way. But in terms of achievement, we're basing it from historic performance. And so based on the average number of homes served over the last several years, looking toward that, and looking toward where we anticipate program participation will be in the future, and based on the when we look at rebate payments to date and the average measure mix to date, we can get a fairly good sense of where we think things are going to be. But again, we are dependent on the agency capacity and their ability to serve those homes. So we can give it a best guess, but there's a lot of externalities that make it more of a challenge to get a full beat on what's going to be served, but we can at least put it in the ballpark. But we think that the potential from AEG is more, maybe more factory condition for where we might be able to be, all things being circumstances on the ground being more baseline and not being as affected by COVID and other factors beyond our control. But it looks like Sean's got his hand up, so I'll let him speak to that as well.
Sure. Yeah, just real briefly. I think the reality is, I believe that the agencies would be able to accomplish these targets. As I mentioned, I think in 2019 we hit 66 completed projects. Had we been able to maintain that momentum, we essentially have a pipeline that we get homes audited, work completed. We've had this conversation, but due to some of the factors just mentioned and previously discussed with building materials, other supply chain disruptions, we are operating within the confines of those constrictions. And so I think that this is aggressive, but I do also think it's achievable. And hopefully, we will have a more stabilized environment to operate in and can get there.
Heather, you have a question?
Thank you. And I apologize that this might be a question for Sean or Andrew. Is this a typical way that utilities come up with their low-income target? Is they ask the agency, how many homes do you think you can get to, and then multiply that by average for that measure for that house?
To a certain extent, yeah. I think we look at historic performance for what's been achieved, because that is a good predictor of, of future outcomes. There are variables, particularly when there are funding fluctuations. I mentioned we have by the capital budget fluctuation here in Washington State that's somewhat offset by federal LIHEAP funding. And then depending upon what's going on with federal legislation currently being discussed, those all do have impacts on capacity, because while Cascade's funds do make up a significant amount of the work that's accomplished, there are state and federal dollars that are leveraged that do have a significant impact on production. So I would say this is our first time in my memory that we have engaged a third party to look at the technical potential here to inform, what is, as Al just mentioned, sort of the factory preset sort of goals, at the 23,000 therms versus what's been identified to be achievable. And so, I think the numbers there are obviously a little squishy just in terms of what agencies are predicting, because we're looking into 2023 and predicting the future, as we know at this point, is pretty difficult to do. So I'd say this is somewhat in line with how things have been calculated, of looking at what production capacity has been, what predicting future ongoing funding would be. So there's those caveats in there.
So, thanks to Monica and Sean and Alan for kind of shedding a little bit of light on how the low income target got set. It sounds like it's being set mostly based on feedback from the agencies and everything. And I don't know if this is a question that's kind of easily answerable simply because I know there are a lot of agencies, but I guess that brings to mind the question to me of how do the agencies make this judgment? So I don't know what kind of factors they are weighing when they are looking a year or two ahead and saying, this is how much we think we're going to be able, or we can achieve in a given, achieve in a given year. I guess that's just kind of a question that's out there for me.
Sure, and Andrew, without taking up too much time here, can follow up offline about that, but the agencies generally conduct a needs assessment every 4 years in their service area, looking at the specific needs of their low-income customers. That does help inform how various services and investments are made in addressing those needs. Obviously, energy efficiency and particularly bill assistance have a rank high in needs, and so really, I think what the agencies, particularly the weatherization programs, are utilizing, the factors that they're considering when making these estimates are, one, how many horses do they have to do the work? Either staff or participating contractors, ranging from electricians, plumbers, insulation contractors, etc. The number of people available to do the work is a factor. The amount of funding available, as I mentioned, from state or federal sources, as well as the investor-owned utilities, is a factor. And then looking at the, there's the investor-owned utility areas, but then the consumer-owned utilities are, particularly federal and state dollars, those do go to to households served by consumer-owned utilities. So that is another factor that we don't necessarily consider here in these conversations is, the electricity side of this, where Cascade operates. There's numerous PUDs, et cetera, that do factor into who's receiving services, and the split between electrically heated homes versus gas heated homes. That was brought up in the recent analysis, but that's another factor of looking at energy burden. So again, don't want to take up too much time here. Happy to follow up offline if so desired.
Interesting, thanks. Yeah, I might follow up, send you an email or something, and maybe we can talk further. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think you're muted, Monica.
Thank you, Alan. I'm going to go ahead and click off the Excel spreadsheet, and we'll go on to the other items about goal setting, target setting. So, hold on here. I want to make sure what you're seeing here. I think that's the Word doc. So, okay. As far as our overall goals, we took the residential program. We did subtract the low income portion. So when you see like table 11, it shows our residential potential. Here, without the low income, that is separate. And then the commercial industrial is here as well. The potential is, like, the goals are slightly lower than they were this year. A couple things went into play. You can read the CPA, of course, refer to the CPA from AEG. Sorry about it, all the acronyms. Our conservation potential assessment from AEG, where they talk about some of the things that were taken into account. Avoided costs changed because we did include the 2.5% for social cost of carbon. That has a pretty big impact on our programs. Outside of that, the new homes, impact to new homes because of code changes have significantly affected what some of that potential is on the residential front, especially. So you'll see some changes to the savings based on the CPA, but essentially we took these directly from the CPA and set our goals that way. So this is just the 10-year outlook. What you're seeing here, obviously the CPA kind of goes a little bit further out. I think it's the 20-21 year horizon. We do have, I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning of the plan here, and we have our budgets and goals at a glance. I think the next point on our agenda is to talk about the budgets too. So I just kind of go through these two tables. I think this is where a lot of the, just at a glance, you can see the big impact to the programs for what we're looking at in the biennium. And again, this is a biennial look for Cascade versus a single annual look, so it's a little different from how we've addressed it in the past. This is the Cascade admin portion that you're seeing for the budget here for residential, commercial, the low income. This is not the agency admin budget. As per request from Andrew, I think that was in last year's conversations, we're being very clear when admin is Cascade specific, or if it's the indirect cost and the administrative rate that we apply to the low income program for the agencies as well. So we tried to be very clear on how we broke it out here. Here's the THRM's targets. Again, this is the low income THRM target is the one that we talked about from the agencies, what they think that they can achieve. It is higher than what we set it at last year, so it's a pretty significant increase, and we are dependent on the agencies to meet that, do everything we can. We've got outreach that we're going to do to support it, but that is something that we don't have a whole lot of control over is how many of those homes are served on the low-income sector. So you'll see together our biennial totals are here as well. That's new. We didn't include that previously. We do have the via gas transformation. I don't want to say cost, that's not the right word, but our investment in MIA. We also have the RTF investment, and then we're doing the CPA every 2 years now, so we need to include some costs. That's only about half of the cost for a CPA. That's a placeholder for 2023. Typically, the costs kind of hit halfway in the year, and the second half of the CPA would hit in the following year. So that's just kind of gives you a rough estimate of what you're seeing here. And this is just at a glance, of course. If we go to, I'm not going to go through the whole BCP. You guys don't have to worry about that. But I will show you the table, the main table. Okay, so here is where we have, you're not going to see the goals here, but you will see the budgets and how they're broken out by the incentive budgets for each of the programs, and then the administrative budget for Cascade for each of the programs. Again, the 25% to the agencies between the indirect rate and the two different criteria for the agencies is included within that incentive budget on Cascade side within this table that you're seeing. We did two tables. We did one for 2022 and one for 2023. So we broke it out that way, and you'll see which ones are allocated as direct benefit to the customer and which one is more the administrative side of the shop. So again, I don't want to go through all of it right now with you because I think that's just a lot to chew on in a short meeting. But I wanted to give you an opportunity. Any other questions about the way that we set the goals? They're directly aligning with the CPA with the exception of the low income program. Any thoughts, questions, comments? There is a copy of this budget table that we're seeing here. This is actually table 3. We do have a copy of 2021's table in the appendix, so you can cross-reference what budgets are going to look like last year's budget versus the next 2 years' budget that we broke out, so that's an easy cross-reference point.
I have a quick question about budget, Monica. Low income weatherization, 63,000 is Cascade's admin expenses on low income program. Mm-hmm. If I'm understanding that, and that goes to staff, marketing, and miscellaneous. That's low. I mean, like how much FTE of Cascade staff time, for example, is spent on that?
I actually have the breakout in hours. I don't have it in front of me, but I do have it. That's how we broke it out. I think in past years, I want to say there's like 452 hours that we put towards the low income program. It's it's just the hours towards the program, and really it's reviewing the applications from the agencies, going back and forth with the agencies. There's not a lot of travel associated with it. There's not a lot of costs outside of that. It's really just reviewing those processes and then working with the agencies when they have questions and comments. So we might be a little bit on the low end, considering the increased rebates for the goals, but we have, really broken out how much time does it take each of us who touch these applications. You've got Sheila, who spends all the time on the back end with the agencies, going back and forth. You have Alan working with the agencies as well, and then you have me actually reviewing those application packets and then going back and forth with Sheila. So we have broken out, and of course other people from the team periodically as needs arise. But that's actually a little more than we've spent in past years for administrating the low-income program.
And those are basically turnkey projects. I mean, they're submitted to the company, all documentation, work 100% inspected. It's basically the company's verifying the work was done correctly and then adding it to the project list, right?
Yeah, we're not verifying the work was done correctly. I mean, the agencies and Department of Commerce verify the actual projects themselves. But what we're looking at is the paperwork and making sure that we have coverage on everything that we need and that we can cover each of the different measure installs that they're applicable within our tariff. Right. So we're not.
We do 100% QA/QC on those per weatherization specification manual. What I meant was just per the approval process and counting the savings, that whole process.
It's a lot more convoluted on our end to process those applications than it used to be, just to make sure that we get all of the funding right, making sure that the agencies get the reimbursement for the indirect rate and the savings on our end. You know, as Alan said, we calculate what those savings are based on deemed savings assumptions. So there's a lot of QA/QC on the back end to make sure that our documentation is in place as we incentivize them. But yeah, I guess that's a roundabout way of saying, Heather, that's more than we spent in the past. It may be a little bit shy if we get a lot more applications, which we should. Then that may need to go up a little bit based on the amount of impact to our programs to deliver it. But really, as Sean mentioned, we're not doing the QA/QC on it. That's already been done on the back end. It's just processing those applications. And I don't want to say just, I don't want to minimize. It's a lot of work on Sheila's side to work with those agencies and make sure they have what they need to be able to submit these. But we are uniquely dependent on the agencies to submit the applications. We aren't soliciting the customers like we are. I hate saying soliciting, that's a bad word really, but soliciting the projects like we are on the residential and the commercial and industrial side to the same extent. Okay. So that was most of it about target setting, and I kind of jumped into the budgets without giving you much of a choice otherwise. Do we have any other specific, I don't see any other bullet points here about the target setting. Anything specific about target setting, or we can just move on to the other questions about the budget specifically? I'm not hearing anything. You guys can still hear me though, right?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was waiting for the crickets. Okay. So to the budgets, you'll see our total for 2022. Our estimate is about 10.7 million. This year, just for a comparison, I believe it was about 8.5 million. So it's a pretty significant increase. Part of that is the low income. You know, we're estimating quite a bit more as far as incentives for the low income than we have in past years, so that we can meet those higher goals. There's also the cost per home has gone up a little bit, as we had mentioned, so that's accommodated here. We don't have as much. We still have, you know, projects that we still have new homes that we need to serve. So those are still in here, but it's not. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit as far as the low homes are concerned. As the new homes, are concerned. So we're going to have to increase some of our outreach and everything to really make sure that those high efficiency measures are installed in the new homes because of the code changes. So that's some of what you're seeing with the increases here. You might notice that there's an EM&B portion in 2022. I'm thinking later 2022. This may be a low estimate. This is third-party EM&B that we're hoping to work into for the latter part of this year, early next year. We're going to see what that looks like. I think some of the conversations with Andrew, with the commission on requirements for the BCPs is probably going to be around EM&B or that, or, you know, options and stuff. And we are doing some internal EM&B next year anyway, but this is looking at third-party EM&B. So that's something you'll see in the budget that hasn't been there previously. In 2023, you'll see, I'm just going to scroll down to our estimates on the bottom. You know, we had some things increased by around, say, 3% just for annual increases on things. But you'll see other stuff is a little bit higher, not a little bit, quite a bit higher. It's at 12.8 million for the program. We do have higher goals in 2023 than we have in 2022. So you'll see higher incentive budgets. Again, the residential, the commercial, and the low income is higher. And then the admin budgets are not, you know, there's some fixed costs from the admin side, so they don't increase quite as much as the incentives do. But again, this is some of the things that you'll see as you look through the budgets, and then you can compare them with the 2021, as I mentioned. That's available in the appendix for a cross-reference. So. Any specific questions? I can show you. It's a pretty, sorry, I'm just going to scroll to one last. We talk about the direct benefit to customer ratios. Again, we're trying for that 60-40. this budget is really, really good as far as the DBT ratios are concerned. It's about a 79-21. I mean, it's really far more benefit to the customer than it is cost to deliver the programs. So something to keep in mind. They're all estimates. We don't know until the end of the year when we actually report them. But best case, pretty significant DBTC, positive DBTC. So that's a good thing. All right. Any questions about the budgets before I move to the measure updates?
I have a couple questions, Monica. This is Heather. If you could go back to that bit about the DBTC ratio. So it says, while well within UTC guidance, the current ratio is not optimal.
Where does it say that one?
At the bottom of page 13. And I
that's not accurate. I apologize. It shouldn't be optimal. It is optimal. I'm not quite sure why it said.
Well, I think, Monica, this is Carrie. I think it's just, the delta between 60-40 and 79-21, there's a gap there that maybe it's referring to.
I think we can rephrase that. I mean, 60-40 is obviously the intent is to have more benefit to the customer than there is cost to deliver the programs. So 79-21 is really a high estimate on the benefit. I'm guessing that as we need to adaptively manage, it's probably not going to be a 79-21 by the time we're at the end of the year. Things happen throughout the year that we actually need to adjust to additional costs. Maybe we're not getting the message out enough and we need to increase some of that outreach. So there is going to be some adjustments there. As Carrie said, there's always room, Carrie didn't say this, I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing again. I think we probably need to rephrase that. Part of this, Heather, in the past is it's been very difficult for Cascade to actually get to that. When we started looking at the DBTC, it was hard for Cascade to accomplish the 60-40. We were, the first year we didn't get it. We had I think it was a 59-41 or something like that, because our territory is very spread out and very rural. So when we're talking about messaging and that type of thing, we don't have, we have to message in multiple areas. So the costs are a little bit higher. We don't have the leveraging opportunity that, say, PSE would if they are already doing an electric program in the same territory. So some of these things, as a smaller rural utility, I mean, we're not just rural. I shouldn't misrepresent us, but very spread out, let's say, and a good chunk of our customer base is rural. There's things that cost us a little bit more to reach out to customers than it would otherwise. So that's what it's referring to, but I think we can probably rephrase that.
Great. I think that was what was confusing to me isn't 79-21 a lot better from a DBTC perspective than 60-40? And so why the word not optimal? Like you're trying to do more than that. So yeah, now I'm tracking.
Thank you. Yeah. Did you have another question about the budget? I thought you said maybe you had a couple questions.
I have a few, and I know I'm going to follow up with you later. So some of them I'd, like to save. I think maybe one question I wanted to ask is, I know that NIA has membership dues. Does the RTF also, do you pay money directly to the RTF?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the 31,000 and change. Oh, we didn't. Okay, I actually added them together, NIA and RTF together for the total here. But we do actually. I think it's got to be later in here somewhere. It's about 31,000 a year for RTF, and then NIA is around 380,000 a year right now, depending on the credit that we have from the previous cycle. That's getting applied through, I think, through half of next year, or portion of next year. So yeah, there is a fee associated with RTF.
Great, thank you. I'll save the rest.
Okay, Thank you. All right, so I'm going to kind of move on from the budget because there's a couple other items that are a little meaty that we want to at least touch base on, and we've got about 20 minutes left. So our measure updates, our recommendations for edits, updates to our tariff in the new year. I do want to recognize our team members who've worked really, really closely with AEG for the last, say, 3 months. Looking at each of our measures, where is there opportunity to improve that measure offering to the customer? Really driving for the most benefit to the customer that we can get. How do we really encourage those higher efficiency upgrades, those different things that we're looking at. We also looked at, like, as I mentioned, the measure lives. Are we consistent with what the region is using for some of these measures, where it's available, where the RTF actually has these available? And if we're not consistent, why? It's not just measure life, it's incremental cost. And in incremental cost, you'll see a lot of incremental costs actually were updated based on RTF numbers from AEG in the conservation potential assessment. Some of them didn't quite align with what Cascade's seeing as well, but we took each and every measure and we were very specific, looked at it with AEG, and they said, okay, this is what RTF is saying, this is what the CPA is saying, is this what Cascade is experiencing within your territory? So, line by line, critical look at each of the measures and the assumptions behind each of the measures within our program. So I'm very proud of the team, and I really appreciate, each of the folks noted here. John's been working really closely with me and Carrie and Chris and Sheila and Jocelyn and Brady and Bob Cootie, the engineer from TRC. Really looking at the best ways for us to update our program and manage it, adapt it to the new assumptions that we see in that CPA. So as part of this measure adjustment, we have the proposed commercial industrial updates and residential updates, and then we also have options for updating our therm savings. As Alan mentioned, we'll be reviewing those in the new year and seeing where we can change some of those deemed savings based on the CPA. I'm not sure how much we actually want to go through each of the measures that we're recommending. What I can do, let's see here, I think it was, okay, so this is, again, you'll see these recommendations in Exhibit 1 is where we're placing them. On the commercial side, let's see here, you'll see when you look at this, some of the recommendations. This is not commercial, this is residential. I'm sorry, do we do residential first? Oh, well, I'll do residential since it's up right now. So on the residential side, you'll see where there's some changes that we're looking at. The Built Green, again, as a reminder, Cascade looks at our programs through the utility cost test lens. We do report the TRC as well, but when we're looking at cost effectiveness of the programs as a whole, we're really basing it on that utility cost test. We had lots of conversations with AEG as well, and then we also looked at those non-energy impacts in the programs. We talked about it through the CPA last year with some members of the CAG. AEG addressed the NEIs, non-energy impacts again, as part of that CPA, and then as part of our review of the measures, we looked at the NEIs that Cascade is reporting, and I think this is a bullet point that I have a little later in the agenda, but I'll mention it now. We looked at the NEIs that we report on our annual report spreadsheets. So we had societal, we have participant NEBs, and then we also had the non-energy benefits that were allocated at the portfolio level through the avoided cost calculations on our second tab of our spreadsheet. And in these discussions with AEG and with Brady's team, with our commercial industrial vendor, we really narrowed down where it looked like we were already addressing some of those societal NEMs as part of the social cost of carbon inclusion in the avoided cost now. So we have removed those NEIs from our calculations. They are just being incorporated at the avoided cost level. And then we updated the participant NEBs column within our spreadsheet. So that's kind of another conversation to have. I don't want to go off topic, but we did a really thorough review of non-energy impacts for the impact on our TRC calculations. And there's a couple at the portfolio level that we're updating as well. But really thorough review of that. That's where we came up with some of these assumptions, but the program as a whole is based off of the utility cost test, benefit cost ratio calculations. So you'll see old TRC, new TRC, but what we're looking at is the built green homes and the Energy Star homes. Rebates are going to need to be reduced on those. Savings assumptions have changed because the code is so much higher than it used to be for these new homes and certification programs. So we're recommending reducing rebates on those. You'll see, removal of one of the tiers for attic for the residential because it's not, it doesn't have very much uptake, and we want to encourage the higher efficiency. So you can go through each of these individually and see the things that we're looking at doing. Windows, we want to, remove the 0.27, stick with the 0.3, and then add a 0.22, so a higher efficiency window rebate at a higher dollar amount too. So these are the types of things that you'll see for Cascade's recommendations for the residential program. If it's green, we're looking to increase the rebate amount. If it's red, we're going to remove that layer. If it's gray, we're not changing anything. And then if it's yellow, we're decreasing the rebate amount. So those are the recommendations for the residential. And then we also have our commercial recommendations. One of the main things on the commercial side is, sorry, I'm just going to find where it's at here. There it is. Removal of some of the food service measures. And those are mostly per code. It's not exactly the code, but it's for, was it HB, was it 1444?
1444, yeah.
Yeah, 144. 44, yeah, 3. Where we essentially the base level of that equipment as its manufacture date after 2020, as of 2021, I think it's manufactured as of 2020 and later, it has to be that Energy Star essentially level. So we really can't incentivize above that. So that's where we're needing to, we're increasing some rebate recommendations here, decreasing one, I think that's what that is. And then we're having to remove the fryers, for instance, the door dishwasher. We are removing the motion faucet controls that's for a different reason, but little to no program uptake and minimal savings attributable to the motion faucet controls per recent research. So that's the type of things you'll see removed from the commercial industrial program. Do keep in mind on the CI side, we still have the custom option. So if there's a single measure that may still be applicable, obviously not fryers if it's code, but if there's something that we could actually still offer through the custom program, that is an option if we remove it from the prescriptive program. So I know that's really brief, but I wanted to kind of give you an insight into this type of things we're going to look at as we, I'm back at the agenda, yeah. As we look at this for the measure assumptions, you'll see, where did it go? Well, I kind of lost what I was saying there. Well, anyway, the tariff that we're going to be filing is probably going to be in January for these updates. Please correct me, Andrew. I think that's what we talked about. We had initially planned on filing it toward the end of this year, but for timing and staff availability and everything, it looked like a January filing date would be more appropriate.
I think that's right.
Okay. If that's not accurate, please do correct me in the near future, and we'll look at it. But that is our assumption, is we're probably going to file these towards the early in the first quarter of the next year, because we need to get the savings. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. I do need to move on a little bit since we're really short on time. So a couple highlights about the BCP. We're still trying to incorporate a residential custom offering. We put that in last year. We weren't able to move forward with it. Still want to have an element of a custom offering because I think there's lost opportunities there to incent customers and to really encourage rebates, or excuse me, installs that we just can't right now in the firm structure of what we see within the prescriptive on the residential side. So that's still a work in progress. we're looking at doing a new homes bonus package, maybe combining a couple of measures where we're really not seeing them in the new homes, to try to encourage those customers or those builders who are still wanting to build gas homes to make sure that they really do high efficiency and multiple measures that are high efficiency. So they're not just kind of falling back, getting to code and then falling back on what's easy. So that's going to be a driver for us. As I mentioned, the NEI review and updates, we can talk about that in a later CAG meeting, but that was a very, very thorough review that we did. There's going to be a question about transport customer potential and services, right? I think part of this conversation is going to occur shortly with the commission, with that workshop that Andrew had mentioned. All right, actually, I'm sorry, Andrew, I don't know if you mentioned it or I did, but it's coming up. I've seen it in emails, October 14th. So we'll see. Transport is not addressed in this BCP at this point, based on the conversations. It's a very short paragraph, and it's just referring to what the CPA said. So as we have the conversations within the workshop structure, then I can add I can address it within the BCP before our due date if that's what comes out of the workshop. Just so you know that we thought about it. I know it's there. We kind of need to know what the direction is before we included it in the BCP. And then something that's I really wanted to kind of draw your attention to, and Peter, you might want to weigh in on this. I know we're kind of running short on time, but the NIA savings estimates are pretty high compared to previous years. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to clarify on the transportation customers here. So we do expect this this issue to be addressed to at least some extent when we go through the open meeting process on the 14th for the CPA approval. So I'm not exactly sure what the decision is going to come out of that open meeting. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to clarify that yes, we do expect to be talking about transportation customers on the 14th at the open meeting, which is when we're talking about the CPAs and hopefully getting approval for the CPAs. So yeah, that's just clarification for everybody.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I will incorporate what we need to. We have 2 weeks if we need to put something in the BCP to that effect. So we've got a little flexibility there. So thank you for the clarification. Yeah. To the NIA savings question again, I apologize. I'm kind of running out of time here, but the NIA savings estimates for 2022 are in the 400,000 therm range. So there's a lot of savings that are estimated. You'll see in the NIA section, I think it's under section 5 of the BCP. It's really exciting to be able to really count some substantial savings for the program. I think we do need to talk as a CAG about how much of that saving, obviously that's an estimate, right? We're not there yet, right, Peter? But it's what the code savings are coming out of NIA's estimates. So I think as a CAG, we need to really look at what percentage of those savings are we going to count towards the program accomplishments from Cascade's perspective, and then what portion of the costs are costs in the past for the NIA program participation. We've reported them. We've counted the program cost effectiveness without NIA, and then we've counted it with NIA as well as a subpoint. So this is our cost effectiveness, and this is our cost effectiveness considering the NIA effort. So two different views into cost effectiveness, and then if we're looking at counting some of these significant savings from the NIA program, then I think we need to revisit how we're allocating those costs within the program internally. So Peter, would you like to speak to some of the savings potential?
Yeah, no, I think you characterized it well. And I think thinking about the kind of the cost and mapping that to the savings is a tricky business, right? Because all the money spent in previous cycles kind of eventually comes out in savings. So money spent this year, savings on codes and products, will happen. Most of that money benefit will be in the next cycle. So that's kind of a tricky tricky business of it's not one-to-one. And then in terms of kind of thinking through this year code savings, next year code savings. Yeah, it's really ramping up on some of those codes that were implemented prior to this year, obviously. I'd be happy to, have some of the team who works on that maybe come to the next CAG or however you'd like to treat that, maybe in a separate working call to kind of explain, what goes into that. What are some of the assumptions? So that way the group can sort of make a maybe more informed decision on, oh, here's how we should or shouldn't count some of this. Just to maybe dig in if there are concerns or anything like that. I'd be happy to kind of help organize that.
That would, from my perspective, Peter, that would be great if we could maybe look at our Q1 meeting. Robin, could you put it as a to-do for me, please? See if we can definitely have a topic specific to NIA savings assumptions, and then address it at the CAG level. Is there a percentage of those assumptions that we want to claim at this point? How does that look like? Because when we really get to our annual reporting, that's when it comes into play, and we kind of have to have had that conversation before we turn around and report it, right? So yes, I think from my perspective that would be really helpful. I hope for the other CAG members that would be an item that we can address in Q1. Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, we could kind of talk through methodology and what goes into that, how it's tested, all of that. Be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
that would be really good. Okay. All right, and then, well, to the point, you can see the calculation here. Speaking to Peter's point, if we were to claim all of the savings that NIA is estimating for 2021, so just for this year, there's about 155,000 therms of savings for the residential program through the code updates. We essentially have met our residential goal this year. So that's something that we need to talk about. We would have met it without doing any more rebates this year, is kind of what I was getting at. So let's have that kind of conversation Q1, revisit with where we're at, and then and those assumptions and what the CAG is comfortable with, or some recommendations on how we should proceed with the reporting of the savings. Okay, and then I had one more item on the BCP, and we've got 5 minutes. So as you're reviewing, could you please take a look at our tariff, our appendix, I apologize, and let me know if that's what you have in mind for an appendix, if it's too much, if it's not enough. We really don't want to just throw things in there, but we have our budget from the previous year, as I mentioned. We've got our definitions of potential. We took them out of the main part of the report or the plan, moved it to the appendix. It's also, we reference the conservation potential assessment quite a bit. You can always read through that. We don't need to repeat over and over and over, so we're trying to streamline a little bit. Outside of that, we have our market segmentation and end use description, and then we have the NIA Cycle 6 program plans in here as well, just for your quick reference. But that's all that we have in the appendix this time. So just kind of look at it as you're reviewing. Let us know by the end of next week or so if there's something else that you'd like us to include. I already spoke to the tariff update that we're talking about doing. So I think that's the BCP. I did have an update to my dates that obviously didn't make it in here, so I apologize. Robin, as a to-do, will you send out those dates that we talked about? I thought I had updated them in this agenda, and I'm not seeing them here. Robin was kind enough to pull 4 dates for us for Q1, 2, 3, and 4 next year. And I do apologize. I know that we did that, Robin, but if you could maybe put that as a to-do, we'll forward them to the team and see if there's any concerns on those dates.
Sure, Robin.
Thank you. And then we have the Bellingham building audit. We have about 3 minutes left. I don't know if they're, Alan or Carrie, if you want to give a really brief update on where we're at with that.
Yeah, I can speak very quickly to it, and Carrie's welcome to as well. But we did sign our contract with RMC Architects, who's performing a comprehensive building audit of our Bellingham district office. The purpose of the audit is to understand the scope of opportunities in a building that has gas, space, and water heat to achieve net zero or near net zero energy, to look at a range of technologies, best practices, opportunities, including potential application of renewable energy like rooftop solar. And just to look at building as a system, what can be done for a building, a commercial building that utilizes gas, space, and water heat to minimize its greenhouse gas impacts and to make it as energy efficient as possible. And so that's what we've asked RMC architects to do, is to perform that building audit because we're looking toward potential renovations to that facility anyway, because it is older. And so they have done a preliminary walkthrough of the site. They have shared some potential technologies for us to explore. And then after they conduct the building audit on our behalf, we'll be making some decisions as to whether we would want to potentially pursue a pilot opportunity or look toward applying some of these net zero energy or highly efficient technologies to our facility. But right now we're in the exploratory phase, trying to understand what the world of possibilities are and if it's going to make sense for us to proceed. But certainly this is something that we have in front of mind in terms of wanting to pursue new avenues of energy efficiency and looking toward ways that we can minimize our greenhouse gas impacts as a gaseous fuel company. And so excited to see what RMC comes up with and to be able to puzzle through what types of opportunities might be available. And Carrie, did you have anything else that you wanted to share?
Thank you, Alan and Monica. We will be meeting with RMC on Friday to review the results of the baseline modeling for the building and talk about potential retrofits. One of the things I'll just leave the CAG with is that this architectural firm has worked closely with Western Washington University, PSE, and the city of Bellingham in designing buildings for all of those entities. Has a very strong reputation and has tapped partners in Seattle for some really terrific thought leadership, from everything from large scale batteries, taking us off the grid, to the rooftop and some kind of carport solar. So they're looking at everything and not restricting their scope in any way. So they're great partners.
Thank you both. It's really exciting to be able to look at our own building internally and what those opportunities are from a third party who's very knowledgeable in the industry and be able to lead us through some recommendations and critical thinking about the building itself.
Yeah, I would just add, Monica, one of the things that came up that was just food for thought is that, and this kind of goes back to, the supply chain and COVID and all of these myriad issues. But if we were to look at a new building, to demolish this building, not take advantage of the embedded energy that's in the shell right now, we would be looking at a 2-year time frame. And the Washington, even if we moved outside of Bellingham, Whatcom County requires at a minimum a silver LEED designation. So there's complications and challenges and opportunities outside of the retrofit in how we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, it looks like Andrew was saying there's one conflict with one of the dates. So we'll get that email out. Let us know if you have other specific conflicts. We try for Wednesdays. We do need to keep in mind where the deliverables are that we have. We have annual report that's due May 1st to the advisory group. We have, the October 1st deadline now for the BCP, that kind of thing. So we keep these in mind throughout the year when we're looking at what kind of discussions we need to have in our quarterly meetings to help feed into those deliverables. So, yep, it looks like Robin will be working with Andrew on the timing on the April meeting. So I think that's all I had for today. I know that we're about 4 minutes over and it was a ton of information. Just a reminder, you have the BCPs. If you're not able to access BizCom to download those, please let Robin or I know. We'll make sure that you do get a copy of it one way or another. I know I have a to-do to send out the Word document to Amy and Heather and Andrew so that they can weigh in via Word document. We do need those edits, recommendations by the essentially close of business on the 15th, so we can incorporate it by the end of this month. So, like lots today, I really appreciate your attention. I'm sorry we got such a short break, but it was great conversations. Thank you for your participation. Any questions before we go? Okay.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Carrie. Please reach out. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Monica. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you all. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin, for helping on the logistics side. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.